Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Beyond the Crucible. I'm Gary SCHNEEBERGER, the co-host of the show and the communications director for Crucible Leadership. And you have pressed play on. We ardently hope you have pressed subscribe to a podcast that deals in what we call Crucible experiences. Those moments in life that are failures, setbacks, traumas, tragedies, things that happen to us, things sometimes that we cause ourselves to happen. What they have in common, the overarching thing that they all have in common, regardless of the circumstances, though, is that Crucible experiences can knock the wind out of your sails. Crucible experiences can, in many cases, and do in many cases, change the trajectory of your life. But here's the good news. We talk about them on this show, not so we can sit around a campfire and trade war stories, not so we can wallow in our trials, but we talk about them to offer hope and healing and encouragement to others who've gone through them. And today we have a guest who has been through some crucibles, who will offer some perspective on how to move beyond those crucibles and the goal of moving beyond those crucibles, as laid out by the founder of Crucible Leadership and the host of the show, Warwick Fairfax, who I'm going to introduce in just a second, is that we will lead lives of significance. So Warwick, we've got a show that's going to be a good one today based on everything I know about our guest.
Absolutely, Gary. Very much looking forward to it.
Our guest today, listener, is Johannes Atlas. And here is his bio. First of all, I love the name. We're going to probably call him Joe a lot in this conversation, just because I don't want to get it wrong. But here's his bio where I will give the full name. Growing up being a voice of reason, Johannes Atlas has always had a heart to serve. Before being born with Poland's syndrome, characterized by an underdeveloped arm and chest muscle, has affected his right side, Johannes rigorously hid his hand in his pocket. Discovering his insecurities, his abnormality unconsciously became his greatest strength. Johannes became an ambassador with the Riverside Chamber of Commerce. Now being a national speaker, founder of the Pressing Toward the Mark event, he has set out to free those dealing with emotional baggage and the chains of life, as he has discovered the formula to be independent of his unconscious baggage. That sounds like we're in for both an interesting and enlightening and insightful conversation. Doesn't it, Warwick?
Absolutely. Well, Joe, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. It's funny, you were telling us off air just about the origin of your full name, Johannes. I want you to just tell the listeners, because I think it's a pretty neat story about your dad and kind of his thinking.
So yeah, my dad, he named me Johannes. He actually comes from Johannesburg in South Africa, which it translates to king. And so, yeah, he really liked the name. He actually wanted to name me Johannes Charleston Atlas. Those would have been the full thing, but then my mom threw in Patrick. So it's Johannes Patrick Charleston Atlas.
There you go.
Wow, that is, that's a name of royalty right there, young man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I have a feeling, as we'll get into later, when you think of king, it probably has more than one meaning, right? There's a spiritual meaning and an earthly meaning. So that's as a person of faith, that's pretty cool to have a reminder in your name, right? Every day. It's like, okay, I know who my king is, right?
Right.
So that is so cool. So now you grew up in California, did you?
Yes, Southern California. Riverside area.
Right. And that's, you there at the moment?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, just tell us a bit about growing up, about your family and background, and just tell us a bit about Joe Atlas and as you grew up.
So like you said, I was born with Poland syndrome, so you could see the difference on my hand here. For people who might just be listening, to give you an idea, my right hand will literally fit in the palm of my left hand. So one thing that I'm grateful for growing up in regards to my parents is that they never babied me. They never, kind of gave me any special attention. They just treated me like normal. And on top of that, I played a number of sports growing up. So I played baseball, basketball, football, tennis, Muay Thai. And in playing all these sports, it allowed me to figure it out. And that's like that's the thing I'm most grateful for, was the mentality that it gave me, is to figure it out. Because there was, certain things, and not even just in sports, but there were just, everyday life things that I, wouldn't be able to do like, everyday individuals would. I would have to figure it out in my own kind of way. And so I didn't really become conscious about my hand until about high school. And so, of course, in high school, everybody wants to fit in and be cool. And so because I wanted to, fit in and be cool, ideally, this thing wasn't cool to me. So yeah, that's where I would hide my hand in my pocket. I mean, on a regular basis, unless I was doing something where I needed both of my hands. My hand was always in my pocket, just to hide from the circumstances, or from situations, from being teased and being made fun of. I just hid my hand in my pocket all the time. And so in those moments was when the baggage for me, my emotional baggage, was really started unconsciously. I didn't really know that, what was happening, but it wasn't until, some years later, I'll get into that. But so after high school was when I would really I wanted to kind of get out of my comfort zone and really just grow as a person, because I was kind of feeling stuck a little bit. And I felt that, me hiding my hand in my pocket, it was becoming a problem. And so I got involved with this finance firm, and it was, though we taught about finance, it was more like a leadership and self-development course. And so super grateful for that as well. And within that, it was a lot of, teaching you to believe in yourself. And so within that, between that and, I grew up in church. And then at a certain point, I started speaking at church as well, was where I'd actually gotten the desire to want to become a motivational speaker. And so I remember the Sunday too, where, during Sunday, during church on Sunday, there we go. So how there's altar call at the end of service. Mm-hmm. And so during altar call, it was, breaking my heart to see Sunday after Sunday, people coming up and, getting prayed for. But I mean, just some of the most macho-y men coming up and crying, and just to see them dealing with life was it hurt my heart. And it was in those moments where I was like, Lord, we can do something, and we need to do something about this, because, it's just not making sense why some of these things are going on. And so that was kind of where I really started, wanting to become a motivational speaker. And from there, I started doing videos on Facebook and on Instagram, and some on YouTube as well. And I then, in beginning of 2020, I'd actually started my first event. It was called Pressing Toward the Mark Conference. And it was, right before COVID hit, perfect timing. And then I ended up going on tour with this guy named India Dade. I spoke in Texas and in LA as well. And then it wasn't until May of last year that I had this experience with God, where he kind of opened my eyes to my own baggage. And I was able to then free myself from, the things that I was dealing with, for over the past number of years.
Well, that's a remarkable story. So I just want to delve a bit into your parents and how they kind of raised you in a way that was probably so helpful, but just because I think most listeners, and me included, until we started speaking, I'd never heard of Poland syndrome. So how does it come about? I mean, I'm assuming it's, in the womb, or it's some genetic thing, but for listeners who may not have heard of Poland syndrome, what is it? I mean,
yeah, so it's characterized by the underdeveloped chest and arm muscles. It's all characterized on one side of the body. So it's all on my right side. So on top of my hand being smaller than my left, I don't have any chest muscle on the right side of my body. So there's no like cure for it. They don't know what causes it. It's not genetic. It's not like, my mother was, smoking or drinking anything, nothing crazy in the womb. It's kind of like a freak thing. It just happens.
And it's not like it's hereditary. It's not like you can go back a few generations and there've been others in your family with it. It's just so that it's something, it sounds like it's fairly rare. And often when things are fairly rare, they don't really understand what it is, because there's so many things to focus on. So as you were growing up, I mean, obviously you must have felt different than the other kids. How did that affect you at, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6 at a young age? I mean, were you obviously aware of it, but how did that affect you, emotionally, physically, just in general?
It's funny because I remember there was just certain moments from like elementary school where I think it was on my part where I was trying to fit in with the wrong crowd and I wasn't quite fitting in. And, just I got into a couple fights in elementary school and just not like getting teased and made fun of for my hand, but just for, I guess, in a sense, for being different. It wasn't like directly correlated to my hand, but just just being different in a sense. And so it was in elementary school is when I just realized this not too long ago, actually, that was when I was really seeking that acceptance. And that was something that I couldn't seek in other people to give. I had to seek that for myself and give myself that acceptance that I was looking for. But yeah, no, it was just in elementary school was kind of like where it started a little bit. But then eventually, as I started getting older, I found my crowd to kind of fit in with.
And, obviously not that many of our listeners will have Poland syndrome, but, it's inevitable, when you're in elementary school, kids always want to fit in and kids can be mean. Anybody that's different, they look different, they're from a different part of the country, maybe they've moved. Anybody that's different gets teased. I don't know what it is. I think you could go to any culture at any age, at any time, and it's just, I don't know, from a spiritual perspective, I guess you could say the fallen nature of humans, but it's so sad that anybody that's different will get teased. I mean, I'm it in others, and, whether it's, your skin color is different, maybe you're not as athletic, or, you're a bookworm, or you're, I don't know what, you're quiet, or whatever it is, anybody that's different gets teased. I mean, you've probably obviously seen that, but I mean, it's pretty sad. It's just, you would think the kids would give each other a break, but not always.
Yeah, it's a weird part of human nature, and it's like it's not until sometime after high school or sometime after grade school that we really start to come together more as a unit, and people the teasing kind of really stops. I guess it's more of like kid stuff, but typically, not all the time, but typically, I guess it's when we get older we become more unified at that point.
I want to kind of talk a little about what you said about your parents not babying you. And, that's probably in hindsight was a remarkable gift, because a lot of parents would have like, oh, we're so sorry, Joe, this is awful. And we're going to put you in, we're just going to baby you. We're going to protect you and put our arms around you. And we're going to make you safe from the world, which is a noble goal, but not always maybe wouldn't serve you. So talk about your parents' attitude, and in a sense, if it was the blessing that it was, in terms of how they handled all that.
Yeah, so it was, so just as you were saying, my parents, they never, just like you were saying, they never babied me. It was never really a huge topic of conversation. There was one thing that I, when I was little, I would kind of put my hand up like a chicken wing. So, kind of like put it up like this. Yeah. And so my dad would tell me all the time, hey, put your hand down. Cause I would just for no reason, just have my hand up. And so he, trained me in that to, kind of put my hand down. But it was them allowing me to play sports. And then, my dad also kind of helping me with that a little bit to help me figure out, how am I going to do this? Because when I played baseball, I would catch and throw with my left hand. So I would, catch the ball, or have the glove on my left hand, catch the ball, take it off, grab the ball, and then throw it. Really, it was a quick little exchange. But so just like little things like that, he kind of helped me figure it out.
For most people, that wouldn't be easy. I mean, I grew up in Australia, so we kind of play cricket. So maybe you would have been better off there, because there's no gloves unless you're the wicketkeeper. So you would have been, at least in fielding, would have been fine. But
there was a professional baseball player, Jim Abbott, who had the same, I mean, it wasn't Poland syndrome, but he did the same thing, caught with a glove, took it off and threw it. And he threw a no-hitter, with that circumstance. So it is a triumph of the will to be able to pull that stuff off. And I would imagine, Joe, that doing that, the confidence that gave you right from Little League on, each step you took, that helped build confidence and help you overcome some of those hidden doubts about yourself.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. Cause it just like you're saying, it gave me that, hey, I can do this.
Right.
And when, and me having to figure it out and let me know, hey, you can do this. You can figure it out if if you're willing to. So yeah, no, it definitely did.
And it's really remarkable because your dad could have said, you know what, Joe, forget baseball, any kind of football, forget anything like that. You can't do it. Just accept your limitations. Some parents, maybe a lot, would have said that, but he's like, okay, no, don't think of yourself as limited. You just have to adapt, be smart. And, that's so good. I mean, I think of an earlier era with polio, like, Franklin Roosevelt had polio. There was a time in which up through the 50s, if you had polio, it was meant to be a shameful thing. You would stay home, don't go out. Somehow they were like almost blamed for it, which is kind of crazy. But I like to think we're a bit more enlightened now. So the way your parents handled it was so wise. It's just, again, don't think of yourself as even challenged. Just, okay, yeah, there are some challenges, but well, let's figure out how to adapt. And that's a big lesson I'm sure you probably share with other people. We all have limitations, some a bit more obvious than others. But, just figure out a way around it. And that was so, I mean, your parents set you up for success, and not all parents do that, but I don't know. I mean, as you look back, do you feel like, boy, the wisdom that they had is truly remarkable in terms of, how they really tried to help you?
Yeah, no, I definitely do, especially in regards to my dad, because we grew up in church. My dad was a minister, and so my dad is very wise, just a lot of wisdom. I mean, he has a lot of insight that he shares with me, just things that blow my mind at times. And so, and just how they raised me and everything, they really just normalized it and really giving me that, how can I attitude? Because, in that I had to figure out how I can do this. And so I think that was something that my dad really helped me with, and super grateful for today. Because I mean, it's made all the difference, and not even just, for me physically, but in my, in business and, in self-development and just a lot of areas. I then asked myself, okay, well, how can I do this? And so it's transferred from, physically, how can I do this, to how can I, in my emotions, in my career, in, my relationships. And so it's given me a figure it out mentality.
That's awesome. So you mentioned your dad was somebody that went to church and faith was important. So what role did that play in your family and you as you were, dealing with challenges and growing up? How did that all weave itself in, the spiritual side?
Having that spiritual advisory, growing up, because I was, born and raised in church. And so, I mean, just a lot of the, just hearing stuff Sunday after Sunday, especially as a kid, I didn't really, know what was really going on. I didn't really understand everything that was going on. But as I gotten older, it was after high school when I got my first job, I had, quit going to church because I started working Sundays. And so then those next few years was when I really started, my heathen backslide. And so, yeah. So, but then after a number of years, I really felt that pull to come back. Like I felt it in my heart and I wanted to go back. My parents, they weren't, hey, you need to go back to church. You need to get back in, it was nothing like that, but I wanted to. And so then, kind of going, getting back into church. But even with that, kind of growing up, I've been in a sense like a voice of reason for a lot of my friends growing up, kind of helping them, with a number of things. I remember in elementary school, actually, where I had the thought that I wanted to be a counselor just because I would, help my friends a lot with, stuff that they're going through and kind of things like that.
You use apparently a phrase that you were, maybe when you're 7 or 8, you were the playground mediator. So talk about, well, what did that look like? You're on the playground, people are having fights or just teasing each other. What did that look like for you being the playground mediator?
It was kind of cool. Just helping my friends, when, dealing with some of the problems that they were dealing with, whether it be, personal or at home or, between, some of their friends, I'd kind of help them bring resolution to it all and whatever that they were dealing with to, hey, it's not, it's not that serious, guys. Let's just, have fun and be friends. We all came here to have a good time. And, just kind of bring the level of aggravation down a lot. It was fun. It was definitely rewarding. I'll say that.
And that's also remarkable because, again, you could have been internally focused and, feeling sorry for yourself, which would be completely understandable. But it sounds like you weren't focused or obsessed with yourself. You were focused on others, even at an early age, which is truly remarkable. And I think too many kids your age, 7 or 8 would have been thinking, hey, hey guys, we don't need to kind of fight here, and thinking of others. So as you look back, do you feel like that's, I want to say, not normal to be focused on others as much as you did, but it sounds like you did.
I think I can definitely attribute that to growing up in church, because the greatest commandments in the Bible, love God with your everything. Second is to love your neighbor as yourself. Mm-hmm. And just not being so focused on me all the time, I just always hey, how can I help? What can I do? Just having that servant leader's heart was something that, again, growing up in church, I'm super grateful for.
Well, and that shows a tremendous degree of empathy. And, one of the things, I'm sure you probably talk about this, it's easy to wallow in our own challenges. Sometimes it's self-inflicted, sometimes no fault of ours at all. But either way, it's easy to feel sorry for yourself. And as understandable as that is, it sometimes is more healing or more rewarding when you're focusing on trying to help others. And it sounds like you've done that your whole life. So just for listeners who may have other challenges, talk about how focusing on others, in some ways is sort of healing, or at least why is that the way to go? I know obviously the Bible talks about that, which, we agree on, but why is that helpful rather than being obsessed with your own challenges and problems? Why is that really a better way to go of focusing on others and trying to help them?
I feel like when it comes to helping others, we really, help ourselves. Because we are a spirit, and the Bible says that there is one spirit. And so we all have the Spirit of God within us, whether you know or believe that or not, everybody has the same spirit. And so it's like when I go to, counsel somebody, I'm secretly kind of counseling myself as well. And just helping, somebody deal with whatever they might be dealing with. But in helping somebody, through a challenge, through some kind of struggle, it also simultaneously helps to minimize what I'm going through. Not in the sense that saying that, what I'm going through is not a big deal, but it takes the pressure off of me and, helping to focus on somebody else, but also to realize that, hey, what I'm dealing with, it's not as big as I think it is, or it's not as great as I feel it is, or though, hey, it may be a big deal, but if I'm, helping somebody else to go through what they're going through, I know that I can make it through what I'm going through. If I'm able to help somebody else while I'm still struggling, or, whatever the case is. But in just helping others, it does such a tremendous work in us while we don't even realize it may be, while we don't even realize it may be doing a work in us, but it's subconsciously and secretly doing a great work in you when we take the time to help somebody else, though we may be struggling.
I think that's so true. It's also empowering because when you're not focused on your limitations and you're focused on helping others, it's probably empowering. It's like, well, look what I can do. Yes, I can do baseball and other things, but I'm impacting people's lives. I mean, look at the impact I'm having. It probably makes you feel maybe a little less challenged and a little bit more empowered and capable of you can say, obviously, God through you, which I think we would agree with, but look what I can do. Look at the change I can make in my world. Right. And that's an empowering, uplifting, and energizing concept.
And I'll jump in here, Warwick, because what you just said reminds me of something you've said about your own crucible. When you said, hey, I can do something. I remember you talking about that job that you got at the aviation services company. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't, you weren't leading a multi-billion-dollar company, but you came to a point where you said, I can do this, after feeling like after the failure of the takeover that there wasn't much you could do. You found that success. And it's remarkable. Listener, catch this. Warwick's crucible and Joe's crucible are extraordinarily different, but the emotions that they've expressed about, hey, I can do something, that was powerful. Wasn't that powerful for you, Warwick?
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously always a challenge comparing Crucible, because I feel like what I went through is like nothing compared to Joe and his situation in terms of the challenge. But yeah, I mean, more generally, yeah. I mean, there was a time in which, lost a 150-year-old family business founded by a strong person of faith in my family for generations, and it fell under my watch. Yeah, I was feeling pretty bad about myself, and everything I touched, I just destroy, and maybe I should just go away and hide, and maybe it won't, hurt people. Or, I mean, I don't know if it was quite that graphic, maybe a little bit, but little bit by little bit, as you do things and you're not screwing up, you actually can help people or do something positive. It's like, wow, I call it a drop of grace. It's a little drop of grace, like a little drop of water in the desert. It's like, wow, I can do that. And little bit by little bit, you connect enough drops of grace, and you got a pool, and I don't know about an ocean, but maybe like a big pond,
Right.
Maybe even a little lake.
Right.
But it's, yeah, I mean, I've found it very helpful. It's not every once in a while I'll read something, or, somebody writes some article and it's like, oh yeah, that's right, that was me. Yeah, but it is true. I mean, in my own very different way, as you're focused on others, it is so empowering. So, talk about sort of high school, teased a bit, but it sounds like you got through that. I mean, how'd you get through the whole high school thing? Sounds like, was that like the pinnacle of teasing, if you will, or gee, I'm different?
Yeah, that really was it. And it was then that, how I kind of, dealt with it was my hand was just, I mean, consistently, my hand was always in my pocket. Unless I was doing something where I needed both my hands, it was just, my hand was always in my pocket. But yeah, and that honestly, that also kind of carried over until when even though I got out of high school. It wasn't until that I got involved with the Riverside Chamber of Commerce, where that was a position where I was like really nervous to get into, because being involved with business 101, you look somebody in the eye, you give them a firm handshake, and that was the thing that I was really nervous about, was because I didn't want to be reminded of the reactions and the faces that I would get when I would go to shake somebody's hand. Whether, be pulled back, or, they would like shake my hand and freak out, or, just various things. And so it was,
and that's a challenge
for that.
Because in our culture, we tend to shake hands with our right hand. Now, obviously some people are left-handed, but the majority, I don't know what the percentage is, the majority are right-handed. So culturally you lead with your right hand,
right?
And I never really thought about it until now, but even if you're shaking a left-handed person's hand, my guess is they'll still stick out their right hand, because, why just make life difficult? Because,
right.
They just say, oh, well, here we go again. But that's got to be, that had to have been, because then people feel awkward, right? And they're like, and
exactly.
Which, even if you weren't feeling awkward, you are going to feel awkward once they feel awkward.
Yeah.
So it's
funny you say that too, because I've tried to shake with my left hand a few times, and exactly that. It was an awkward moment at that point. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least during COVID, in one of the small blessings there, the whole, elbow bump. It's like, okay, I can do that. I can do an elbow bump. So nobody's shaking hands these days. But so it's speaking of that metaphor of drops of grace, it sounds like that Riverside Chamber of Commerce, that was somewhat of a significant step for you in your outlook and your feeling that you can contribute. So talk about how that really helped change your thinking or grow your thinking a bit.
Yeah. So in doing that, because it's, Riverside, like I say, Riverside Chamber of Commerce, where I'm in a room with, a bunch of business owners, and we're all just talking and connecting and networking. And so, it's obviously a lot of shaking hands. And so in just doing that, I was, like I said, I was literally nervous to do it, because I did not want to be reminded. But at that point, I was really wanting to get out of my comfort zone. And so I got into it anyways. And so, I started shaking people's hand, and, some people noticed, and, other people didn't. And it wasn't really a big deal. And it was kind of within that, in just the habitual shaking of hands, that I learned to begin to get over it a little bit. Even after, being involved with the Chamber of Commerce, there was still a little bit part of me that wasn't until, about 8-9 months ago that, I really kind of got over it. But there's still a little bit of part of me that kind of still stuck, that still held on to that ill feeling I had toward it.
I don't know if you felt this, but there's this concept where if you seem to be over it and not awkward or embarrassed by it, somehow it helps other people not be embarrassed by it. or feel awkward. Have you felt that with other people? Like if you're like, hey, this is cool, it's okay, that, it's easier for other people to relax and not worry about it. Have you found that?
Yeah, sometimes like I'll make little jokes about it, and it does kind of help ease some people's tension about it a little bit. Or they'll go to shake my hand and they're like, oh, they'll make a comment, and I'll make a comment, say something funny, and just to, I have noticed that, and it's you're right, it does when and it's only when I've made it a big deal that it's been a big deal to people,
right?
And when I don't make it a big deal, then it's not a big deal to people. And so it's interesting how that works out, but yeah.
It's an important lesson. So what was the role of being an ambassador at the Riverside Chamber of Commerce? What did that involve?
So in being an ambassador, we were pretty much just helping new businesses coming in to the community and kind of pretty much get situated, come in and, network. How can we help you? And what ways can we assist them at that point? Invite them out to different events that we had, pretty much because we would have events from time to time, and it was pretty much kind of getting as much people as possible come out and, network and talk about their business. And because Riverside is a huge, it's a big business city as far as, it's like small businesses. Uh-huh. And so it was a lot of, just pretty much getting the community to build itself.
And I imagine you had all sorts of different businesses, maybe people from different cultures, different backgrounds. So talk about how that felt like helping a lot of very different people, because I'm guessing it was, a lot of different people, a lot of different backgrounds. So how did that feel helping those folks?
Yeah, when I was involved, I was a little bit more on the back end of it. I didn't really get to the front to see all the all the different businesses and whatnot. But no, it was definitely rewarding in a sense to see the different businesses and people come out and network and come back and talk about it a little bit later. Where some people would come back to the to our meeting that we had every week, and they would say how much some of the events that they've came to made a difference, and some of the networks and connections that they made at that point. Okay,
so talk a bit about what you do now with kind of pressing towards the mark, and just sort of the things you do now.
Yeah. So with Pressing Toward the Mark conference, that was actually a God-given idea. I remember I was driving home, and then just God dropped the idea in my mind, was like, hey, have your own, have an event at, have an event. And he's like, call it Pressing Toward the Mark. And I'm like, Lord, that's dope. I love it. So I really had no idea, how it was going to work or anything, but, God told me to do it. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it. And so I just, started getting everything going. I found the venue, I started marketing and finding people to, come to the event. But that was like I said, that was my first event. And so with Pressing Toward the Mark, it was really just about, pressing toward your goal, whatever, goal you have in mind, whatever it is that you want out of life, it's pressing toward that and making sure that, you achieve what you want, because, we only have one lifetime. And so it's like, might as well, get what you want out of this life.
And so what are some of the keys from your perspective about pressing towards the mark? How do people do that? What's sort of some of your key philosophies there?
In Pressing Toward the Mark, one of them was to, you have to really believe in yourself. And, between believing yourself, having mentorship, and growing were my key points in that. So like with believing in yourself, the Bible says that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And so if you don't have the belief in yourself, if you think lowly of yourself, that's something that we have to become aware of and heal from that, in that sense, to be able to believe in ourselves, so we can achieve what it is that we're looking to achieve at that point. And then having mentorship, it's at that point, I had my mentor there as well. And so I pointed that out to the audience, to have people to come in and help to, give you positive criticism, or, to help direct you, what could you have done better? What could you have done different? And things of that sort to, better guide you down the route that you're going. And then, growing as a person is a, the other huge part of that is because, we can't excel past who we are. And so we have to grow to the point of, what it is that we're looking to, where it is that we're looking to grow towards, what it is that the goal that we're looking to achieve. We can't grow past that, or we can't move past that unless we grow to who that person is. And, in the thinking, in the mind of that person, who it is that you're wanting to be, you have to become that.
You said a couple of very important things, just the importance of mentors. Sometimes we have this attitude, I don't need help. I can do it all myself. But, it's amazing. You've probably found when you've asked, there are probably people that actually are happy to help you, that want to help. Sometimes we think, oh, nobody cares. Nobody wants to help. But if you found your own experience when maybe you've asked, people come alongside, that you have found people that actually want to help you get to where you want to go. Has that been your experience?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Once you just start talking about, what it is that you're wanting to do and your mission, your goal, people, a lot of people are very willing to help. But I think simultaneously I'll say with me in the beginning, when I first gotten started into it and I would have conversations with people, there was still that part of me that didn't necessarily believe in myself. So my baggage for me was that I'm not enough. What I ended up making my hand mean about me was that I'm not enough. And so when that's one way how it affected me, when certain opportunities would come around, because I had that belief about myself was that I'm not enough, I messed up certain opportunities. But yeah, a lot of people are definitely willing to help, if you're willing to. Yeah.
So how did you overcome that concept of I'm not enough? Because some of it's internal, but you have a daily physical reminder that if you choose to go that way, you can say, you can look down and, okay, I'm not enough. I mean, how did you overcome that concept? Because if you hadn't overcome that concept, life would have been very different for you. How'd you get past that?
So, it was a moment. It was literally in a moment that this happened. So sometime it was in last May. I was praying because at a certain point in my life, I was just really just kind of feeling stuck in a sense. I was wanting to grow, but I wasn't sure, what was going on. And so I prayed. I'm like, Lord, open my eyes up to me beyond the limitations of my understanding. And so because at that point I was ready for the answer. It was within about a week and a half to 2 weeks I got an answer to that prayer. And so I remember I was, standing right here in my room, and God had opened my eyes up to a moment back into high school when there was moments when I would get teased and I got made fun of, that he opened my eyes up to that moment. And it was in those moments that I took on that identity of I'm not enough. So those were the moments of my innocence, my trauma, that I had then made it mean about me that I'm not enough. But when you look at the moment, like none of that means that I'm not enough. None of that means that. When I really look at the moment from like a camera's point of view, nothing in that situation means I'm not enough, but that's just the identity I then attached onto it. So once God had opened my eyes up to that, I then at that point just affirmed the opposite. And I told myself, I am enough. Like who I am as a person, I am enough. And really just in saying that, I had to really feel that, really emotionalize that. And from that point moving forward, I had to keep in mind too, because there are certain moments that, moving forward that would trigger that feeling of I'm not enough. But then when they would come about, I would catch it and I would affirm that I am enough. And it's just a consistent thing of, hey, no, Johannes, you are enough.
Joe, what you're saying is so profound, because every human being are going to have days when they think, you know what, I'm not enough. I'm worthless. You may not say it out loud, but inside, there's hardly a human that hasn't had that thought once in a while, maybe often. And so being able to affirm, no, I am enough. You have a spiritual foundation. Obviously, I think of Psalm 139 that says, I'm beautifully and wonderfully made. And it's hard to say, I mean, really? But from God's perspective, everything happens for a reason, and he all makes us different. We look different. We have different background skills, but in his eyes, we are all perfectly made, which sounds a strange thing to say, but biblically, that's what it says, right?
Right.
And so if you think you're enough and God says you're enough, what more do you need, right? You and God together, it's not a bad team,
It's a good duo right there.
Yeah, so that's important. And whatever people's spiritual beliefs, I think, just that concept that you are enough, you just have to own that concept. Whatever your anchor is, it might be a different faith or a different philosophy of spirituality. It's got to, unless you start with believing that you are enough, you can't really do anything. That's the rock in which you've got to found your ability to contribute to the world and move forward. So so that sounds like that was huge. You've had mentors. What are some other aspects of really helping people press towards the mark and achieve their goals? I mean, how do people grow beyond that?
I would say it does vary person by person. I mean, a lot of it starts with awareness, and you have to be self-aware and seeing, being aware of, who you are as a person, being aware of your strengths, of your weaknesses, the things that you struggle in. And in being aware of that, just notice. It firstly starts with just noticing where, the struggle is. And when you notice it, hey, it's not right, it's not wrong, it's just what is. Mm-hmm. And so then at that point, you then have to have the desire to, you have to have the desire to want to grow at that point. Because some people, it's easy for us as human beings just to kind of stay where we are, to stay in our comfort zone. But it's like you have to have the desire to really want to grow and get out of our comfort zone. And so at that point, once you start becoming, aware of it, for me, hey, I noticed that I struggle getting out of bed in the morning. I struggle I procrastinate a lot. I, struggle with my discipline, notice those areas where, the areas of struggle, and then become aware of it. And in becoming aware of it, then you start working on doing something about it. Sometimes just take little baby steps. Sometimes just, hey, if I struggle getting out of bed in the morning, then, let me put my alarm clock across the room, or let me, just find like one little step, just kind of take little baby steps instead of, trying to conquer the whole mountain at the first step.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we talk about in Crucible Leadership is small wins. I mean, I'm not somebody by nature that moves 1,000,000 miles an hour. I'm a sort of thoughtful person, which can be good, but so sometimes the mountain can seem overwhelming, but it's like, if I look back, okay, what did I accomplish today? Okay, I did this, and that. Okay, if you connect enough small wins, it ends up being a big win. But, rather than saying, oh, that's impossible, I'll never, like in your case, be a motivational speaker, I'll never do this and that. Okay, what's a small win? Maybe I can talk to somebody, maybe I can prepare, maybe I can practice with friends and neighbors. I mean, there's probably a series of small steps you've taken to get to your goal, right? Rather than saying, okay, gee, I don't know if I'll be able to speak at, I don't know, Staples Center or something in LA, or some massive auditorium. And gee, that feels a little far away. Okay, well, maybe one day, but let's start a little smaller. Maybe there's someplace locally. Do you know what I mean? Like, right. Sometimes you can set the bar so high that unless you do that today, then I failed. Well, okay, just small step at a time, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's something that I've really been kind of attaching onto more and more. And I have it written at the top of my whiteboard here, just 1% every day. So just a 1% gain every day. And at the end of the year, you've grown 365%.
That is a fantastic word, and I will take my one small step as the co-host of the show to say that I think that I also heard the captain turn on the fasten seatbelt sign, and it's getting to the point that we're going to be moving toward landing the plane. Joe, before we do that, and Warwick asks you, another question or two, are there places in social media that folks can find you? One of the things I thought fascinating about your story, and it went by really quickly, but you mentioned that you sort of got your start in reaching out and helping people manage those things that kind of torment them, those things that challenge them, by using YouTube videos. And that is a fascinating way to leverage that technology to live a life of significance. But how can people, if they want to know more about Joe Atlas and your speaking and your conferences, how can they find you?
Yeah, so right now I'm working on a website that'll be up pretty soon here. It's joeatlasspeaks.com. It's not up yet, but when it does come up, Facebook, you can look up my business page. It's Speaking to the You in You. That's the name of my company. And then on Instagram, it's JO_speaks.
Excellent.
So I know one of the things you talk about is, and this has been your whole life, is not letting crucibles, not letting challenges define you. For those people that may be listening right now and they're going through a crucible, it could be physical, personal, a marriage breakup, a death of a loved one, getting fired. How do you how do you avoid letting your crucibles, letting your challenges define you? What's the way out?
I would say that, whatever the situation was, whatever your crucible was, however, it made you feel, you are completely valid for how you feel. That's first and foremost. I want people to know that you're completely valid for how you feel. But now looking at it, knowing what you know now, do you want to continue to feel that way? And that's a big thing that we as people have to take the time to answer. Do we want to continue to feel that way? And then if not, then what is it that I want to do moving forward? But wherever that area that brings us the most hurt or trauma, wherever the area of our struggle is, we have to work to bring resolution to that area so that we can move forward in what we're dealing with.
That I have been in the communication business long enough, gentlemen, to know when the last word on a subject is spoken. And Mr. Joe Atlas, you spoke the perfect last word in our conversation for today. Well, so I'm going to do there's a lot. I've pulled 3 takeaways I think listeners can take from our conversation. There's a lot more than that, but the 3 that sort of leapt off to me. And Joe, I got to tell you, I do this in every episode, and it took exactly 45 seconds of you speaking when I wrote down number 1. So you're the first, the fastest person to the finish line on a takeaway that I've done yet. But
awesome.
Takeaway 1 from this conversation, listener, I think is this: take the time in the midst of your crucible to, as Joe did, figure it out. There's no timer on moving beyond your crucible in most cases. It's not like an action movie where the hero has to defuse a bomb before the numbers on the dial get to double zeros. You can press into the pain, face the challenges, look at the lessons you're being taught, and then apply them as you press ahead at your pace. Second takeaway, believe you can bounce back. Truly believe that. We hear the word mindset a lot these days. It's a popular term. And as Joe put it, he built a figure it out mentality in navigating life with his physical challenge. He was encouraged by his parents that there was no limitation he could not conquer. You find that encouragement in your own crucible. It might be your parents, your spouse, your friends, whoever it is. Find a person or people who give you support that you need to conquer your crucible. And then the third point, give to others, become a mentor, help them with the challenges they face, talk to them about their emotions, help them articulate and pursue their goals. Again, as Joe put it, funny, all 3 of these points I say, as Joe put it, help them press toward the mark, help them understand that they are enough. Listeners, thank you for spending this time with us on Beyond the Crucible. Warwick and I have a little favor to ask you. If you enjoyed this conversation, if you got some insight, some hope, and encouragement from it, we ask that you would click subscribe on the app on which you're listening to the show. We also ask that you drop by and leave us a rating. The more ratings and subscriptions we get, the more people we can bring these insights like Joe Atlas has shared with us today to more folks. And until that next time that we are together, please remember this: your crucible experiences are painful. Joe described some very painful, traumatic situations. He did it with some lilt in his voice, but the pain was real of what he experienced. But the beauty of that, it was not the end of his story. It was just the start of his story. And it can be the start of your story. Your crucible can be, if you learn the lessons of them, if you apply some of the lessons we talked about here. And the reason that it can be the start of your story is that it brings you to a place. You learn those lessons, you leverage those lessons to a place that allows you to pursue a new story that can be the most rewarding one of your life. And it is rewarding because, as it is done for Joe, as it is done for Warwick, it leads at the end of the day to a life of significance.